For 7 long years, the house on Birchwood Lane held only silence. Sarah and David, a couple defined by their quiet kindness and the deep, aching void of childlessness, had finally surrendered their dream of a biological family. Instead, they embraced a new, precarious hope, one waiting in the sterile, cold halls of the Ironwood Orphanage, located deep in a rural region known more for its ancient traditions than its modernity. Their hope had a name: Elias. He was 7, unnervingly still and pale as winter snow. His eyes, vast and dark, seemed to track things David couldn't see. His records were thin, almost intentionally vague, detailing only that he was found abandoned in a desolate area marked by harsh weather and even harsher local lore. "He is a child of quiet habits," the director, a woman with hands like old leather, had murmured. Her eyes were dark with something Sarah didn't want to name: pity or perhaps fear. "Do not, under any circumstance, disturb him when he is still. He needs his quiet." It was the only guidance they received, an odd, heavy warning that echoed off the windows as they drove away, leaving the silent, lonely institution behind. The house tried its best to be welcoming. David had spent weeks painting Elias's room bright blue, filling it with colorful, friendly toys. But Elias did not interact. He didn't speak, he didn't laugh, and he didn't play. He simply sat. He was an observer, never a participant. The one exception to his profound indifference was the wooden doll. It was less a toy and more an object of worship. Heavy, crudely carved from dark, unfamiliar wood, it had stiff, jointed limbs and large, unsettling holes where eyes should have been. Elias didn't play with it. He merely clutched it. At dinner, he'd sit rigidly at the table, the doll pressed against his thin chest. When Sarah tried to gently place it on the nightstand, Elias would awaken instantly and reclaim it, binding it against himself like an organic extension. It was not a plaything. It was an idol, an anchor. The change in the house began subtly, manifesting as bad luck. The incidents were small enough to be dismissed as fatigue or coincidence, but they mounted, accumulating a toxic feeling of dread. David, a meticulous craftsman who kept his garage spotless, suffered the first blow. As he reached for his favorite plane, a heavy, unused wrench, one he knew was secured on a high shelf, suddenly leapt off the rack, striking his hand hard enough to break a finger. He screamed, clutching his hand, and swore it was impossible. He looked up, nursing the throbbing injury, and saw Elias, sitting perfectly still at the window overlooking the garage, staring out. When David went inside, Elias was already back on the couch. Then came the whispering. Sarah would be alone in the kitchen, washing dishes, and hear her name, "Sarah," repeated in a faint, dry voice. It always seemed to come from the dark hallway outside Elias's closed door. She started turning the radio up louder, but the whisper always seemed to cut through the sound. It was too quick to pinpoint, too faint to confirm. She told herself every night that it was just the house settling, the wind, or her exhausted imagination. The horror became undeniable when it involved Buster. The family dog, a gentle golden retriever, and a member of the family for 8 years, was the picture of friendly affection. But when Buster first saw Elias, he didn't wag. He froze, then retreated, trembling violently, hiding under the dining room table for 2 full days, refusing to eat. When he finally emerged, Buster went straight for Elias, not in aggression, but in a sudden frantic display of raw terror. He barked, a desperate, hysterical sound aimed not at the boy, but at the empty space just behind him. It was a frenzied warning that Elias simply ignored, his gaze fixed on some point in the distance. A week later, Buster died in his sleep. The vet was utterly baffled. No illness, no poison, no organ failure. Just a quiet,
unexplainable system failure. In the desolate silence that followed, Sarah watched Elias, who hadn't shed a single tear, tracing the dark, crude lines of his wooden doll. The dog's death was the final, devastating push Sarah needed to abandon rational thought. Driven by worry that Elias was somehow responsible, she revisited his sparse adoption file. It was mostly blank, but tucked deep inside the liner of the envelope was one brittle, folded sheet of paper. On it was a crude, ancient, repeated symbol, a simplified human figure with its limbs bound. It looked like a pictograph of sacrifice. Her hands shaking violently, she crept into Elias's dark room. He was asleep, or perhaps just still, the doll clutched to his chest. She gently, painfully managed to pry the doll free, her fingers slipping on the rough, cold wood. She flipped it over. Carved deeply in the rough, dark grain of the wood was the exact same unnerving symbol. It was not a plaything. It was a tether. Sarah let out a gasp that caught in her throat. She heard it again, louder, clearer, colder, coming from just outside the door, the unmistakable sound of her name. Sarah. The sound faded as the visual went black. Do you want to know what this symbol meant? What Sarah found out when she finally understood the nature of Elias's adoption? The vault has only been cracked open. If you are ready for the confrontation, the revelation, and the final horrifying moments of the curse, lock the door, turn off the lights, and subscribe to the Vault of Evil.